Let's talk about ripping out on machine knitting projects. It happens to all of us. There's no shame in it, and eventually something is going to occur. Well, you wish you could go back a row or two, or maybe more. Maybe it's your mistake, could be a flaw in the yarn. You're going to need to rip out, and I'm going to show you how to do that today in several circumstances. Remove the working yarn from the feeder. Don't cut it usually, and begin to tug on it gently, at the same time lifting it up at something of an angle to the needles and to the needle bed. And you will see gradually stitches pulling out where you're really unknitting the last few stitches, but the row below pops onto the needle. That's what we want to happen. So go slowly at first, as I did, and then if everything is going well and the yarn is smooth and cooperative and you're having a good day, you may be able to be a little more aggressive. Pull harder, tighten more, and quite a number of stitches will unknit and the ones below them will pop onto the needles. At the end of each row and the beginning of the next one that you rip out, you need to change the direction of your tug, which usually means changing your hand positions, in order to keep it the same relative to what you're doing, but we keep switching sides. You are seeing me rip down to a lifeline. If you are a new knitter or working on a complicated pattern, a lifeline is a good idea, and I have a whole separate video for you showing how to insert one and the circumstances in which you might use it, including rehanging all the stitches should they drop off from the lifeline so as to resume your project. Here I've gotten just as close as I can get so that you can see, as I slow this down, the action that occurs at the needle when we give the correct tug. The stitch that's presently on the needle is unknitting and popping the one from the row below onto the needle if all goes well. Here you can clearly see that the needles get a little bit disarranged by this process, and many times in this series you'll see me pushing them back to normal working position so as to have a predictable angle to pull from in the following row. The more disarranged they get, the less likely we are to succeed. The rows being released right now are ones on which pretend bust darts were knitted. So stitches were left out of work on each side progressively to create the bust shape. You can see that unknitting goes just normally. A stitch won't unknit in a row where it didn't exist. The working yarn will go to the last stitch that knitted on that row, then turn around and begin to want to unwind or unknit in the opposite direction. So there's no big trick to that except watching for where the turn comes and responding to it. On the subject of bust darts, I won't cover that here because I have an entire video devoted to the subject. If it is not something you've done before, you'll be surprised how simple it is, and you will not be surprised at how much it makes a sweater hang better and more flatteringly on a curvaceous body. So I'll place a link to that video in the program notes for this one. Also, a link to the video on using lifelines, because all of these things are a little bit interrelated and you may want to see that.